I can't get flexible. I've always been stiff and tight. What advice do you have for people that have this mindset towards flexibility?
So what I would say is, I mean, if I put myself in that person's shoes, I would be looking out at other people, like potentially myself or whoever, and thinking they must spend hours and hours and hours like in the gym stretching to reach that level of flexibility. And I'm just like, I'm trying to push out this message where it's like, no, you don't have to spend hours. All you have to do is be consistent, spend a little time each day, and you can get incredible results. Like it only takes 10, 15 minutes a day. And if you do it consistently, like over a month period, you're going to notice an insane change from day 1 to day 30. So it's just like break it down, spend 10 minutes a day, like have a routine and stick to it and just like see for yourself like the results that you can actually achieve. Like it's possible for anyone is what I would say.
Having a flexibility routine is a key thing that you just said there, because for the average person that wants to get flexible, it's just, oh, this area is tight, I'm going to stretch it. How many exercises, how many sets, how long do I hold it for? I'll just go based on feel. And they just do it randomly in a workout and randomly throughout a week. How do you look at flexibility programming to make progress?
Yeah. So interesting point. I would say the more ways you can measure, the more ways you're going to win. So if you can at least have like a structured routine, like you can create one yourself. You can reach out to people like myself or like you who can create one for you. And what I like to do anyway is take photos or videos of particular stretches or exercises, where like basically a starting point, like an anchor point, and then, a midway point 15 days later, and then like another 15 days later by the 30-day mark, I can retake those photos and see like actual visual progress. And then along the way as well, you count your reps, you count your sets, and you count the weight that you're using for the exercises, which is just another measurement to back up your progress as well. So having that measurable kind of data along that, however long it may be, journey. Typically I work in 30-day like kind of time periods, just because that's how I run my challenges. But yeah, having that measurable data that you can visually see through a photo or a video, and that you can write down and record in terms of weights, reps, and sets, is going to be extremely beneficial and keep you accountable at the same time along your mobility journey.
I love that, because with flexibility, we don't commonly think to measure for whatever reason it is, because usually flexibility is seen as like an afterthought. I just want to increase my range of motion and move better. It's some arbitrary thing. Whereas if someone wanted to have a body transformation, lose fat, they would take photos. They would weigh themselves regularly. When we go into the gym to work out, we never just go and just say, we're lifting weights. You know exactly how much weight you're lifting, your sets, reps, etc. Doing that for flexibility gives you the motivation, because you can tangibly see the progress. It's not just some concept. I'm trying to get flexible and it's, I think I'm improving, bro, or I don't know, I feel pretty similar.
Exactly. No, I could not agree more. Yeah. Approach it like you do with your weight training, which is pretty much what you just said. Record as much as you can, and you're going to see way better results. You're not just going to be kind of floating around, stretching here and there. You have a regimented routine that you stick to. You record your weights, your reps, your sets. You take photos on day 1 and day 30 or whatever it may be. And you're going to see insane results. And that's going to help keep you accountable as well. But yeah.
Coming up with a flexibility routine takes work, which is why most people follow those YouTube follow-along routines. What's your opinion on those? Can they be effective?
I think they can be effective in the short term, mostly. If you're looking for, say, I don't know, you've had a long day at the office and your hips are feeling tight, like you can look up a little follow-along routine, and it's probably going to be like mobility routine for desk workers, which is focusing on the hips, because my hips feel tight, and that can provide some short-term relief, which is, that's great. That's going to make you feel better in the moment. But if you want to see those long-term compounding effects and results, I would suggest sticking to a routine, weekly routine over months and hopefully years into the future. And that's where you're going to see like a real long-term benefit.
because those follow-along routines are usually just done for time as opposed to what you just mentioned earlier is important, having that progressive overload built into a flexibility routine. So by creating your own routine, you'd have your sets, reps, weight lifted, you'd have an objective measure of your range of motion by photo and video. That's the key difference, isn't it?
100%. Yeah, exactly. Having that program that you can stick to, that you can do every day, seeing the data, it's going to help dramatically by the end of the result.
And the most important thing for any fitness goal, whether it's flexibility, strength, muscle mass, is seeing progress. How long does flexibility take to see a meaningful change?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So I run 30-day challenges, like a lot of them. And I was actually just scrolling through one of my challenge groups today, and there was an awesome message. So I get everyone to take photos on day one, which is like a deep squat, a forward fold, and a downward dog. So 3 basic movements and just photos, just because it's easier than looking through 500 videos. But so the guy took the photo, and then even a week later, he uploaded the photos into the group chat, and he's like, wow, look at the difference between day 1 and day 7. And there's a pretty insane change. And these routines are 20 minutes long, and they're full body focused. The deep squat, the forward fold, the downward dog, you can see visual changes and improvements in flexibility and mobility, in 7 days. So it doesn't take that long to see results. And the fact that he had those photos from day 1 that he could compare himself to on day 7 is so important, because if he didn't take those photos, he might not have even realized, you know what I mean? So having that data and seeing it, and it's such a positive reinforcement, and it makes you want to stick to the program and keep going forward.
I wonder what the primary change and adaptation is in acute flexibility gains. Is it just your ability to tolerate a stretch? Surely there's some basic science happening. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, I'm not a scientist. So,
no Andrew Huberman over here. No stress.
No. I mean, I do consume a lot of his content, which is great, but not quite as scientifically, alert as he is. But I just think with anything, if you stick to it for long enough and you stay consistent, you're gonna see results. It doesn't matter what it is. Flexibility, whether it's lifting weights in the gym, whether you're just drinking more water consistently day to day, you're probably going to notice a change within a couple of weeks at the very least.
Yeah. And it's having that optimism, to our earlier point about I can't get flexible, I've always been stiff and tight, changing your mindset to one of optimism that I can improve. This isn't something that I always have to have as part of my default way of being in my body. And the moment that I changed that mindset for myself, alongside being consistent with flexibility and actually sticking to a routine, I saw tangible changes for the first time in my life, because I came from a calisthenics background where it's just all strength stuff, just pull-ups, dips, push-ups, all that stuff, but not doing much end range, static holds or weighted mobility and stuff, until I thought, okay, let's give this a red hot go and adopt the mindset that I can do it. Having those two was just a game changer for me, and actually seeing progress. Yeah,
exactly. And a lot of it, I mean, some of it comes down to just maturing in the gym. That's what I found, because I used to just be I don't know, your classic bro split, push pull legs. And then I don't know, through years and years of training, you kind of just, you mature and you think, there's actually more to just looking buff. I actually want to feel good. I'm a little bit crusty. I wake up stiff all the time. My joints are sore. I'm what's going on here? Let's take a step back. Just through years of being in the gym and just learning and just being inspired by people like yourself, and people like Ben Patrick was a big inspiration for me as well. And just, seeing different ways and approaches of training and feeling good and looking good as a byproduct has been an absolute game changer.
And it's not an all or nothing thing. It's not as if you have the goal of increasing your flexibility, you have to go full blown yoga mode and all you do is passive static stretching for hours a day. It can literally be as simple as adopting a full range of motion mindset in the exercise that you do, which is very humbling as well, because if you're used to trying to display your max strength, inevitably you cut range of motion to like maximize how much you can do in a dip, a pull up. Whereas if it's like, okay, I want to be as flexible, strong, and muscular as possible, just using that full range of motion is probably one of the most practical things that I can give to people to apply.
Exactly. Like, just take your current routine, subtract like 30 to 50% of the weight off what you're doing, and just focus on that full range of motion, and you're going to see like some insane changes. You're going to get stronger and you're going to get longer as a result, and you're going to be more flexible and mobile. Like, it is that simple. Like, if you really just want to, like, the most basic thing to do, take your current routine, subtract 30% of the weight off, and just like really focus on that control range of motion, slow negatives, and just feeling that deep weighted stretch on every single exercise. And yeah, you're going to feel a deeper mind muscle connection at the same time, which is, going to help with the pumps, and it's going to make you feel good and be more flexible. Yeah.
That's what we want. We want the combination. We don't want to be just binary one thing. If you've been training for some time, you want this well-rounded physique that looks good and can perform well too. Short versus tight muscles. How do we know whether we should stretch or strengthen an area?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So I usually go with the approach that we need to strengthen through a full range of motion with most things, because it's like the simplest thing to do, which is going to help the most people. So just to keep it simple for most people, I would say strength and strengthen at the same time. So basically that's like strength through length training, which is something we just talked about just then. So taking those exercises, cutting the weight down a little bit, and just performing that full range of motion, because that is actually going to help with flexibility as well, and having strength in that flexibility, which is also important. But like in terms of shortened muscles, I would say a short muscle in terms of sensation, like if you're trying to stretch your short muscle, it's probably going to be there's going to be a lot more tension in that muscle, and you're going to feel it, and it's going to be much harder to stretch that muscle. Whereas if it's just tight, you can kind of like take your time with it. Maybe after a few sets, you can start to feel it release. But a shortened muscle can often just come from prolonged sitting, having bad posture for like years on end. So I would say that's probably chronically short and needs to be addressed with consistent training. Whereas a tight muscle could be tight from like a previous workout you've had and just needs a little bit of movement, a little bit of lubrication. That's kind of the difference in my head anyway.
Well said. I really like that distinction. And a personal example for me, where I always thought I had tight glutes and tight calves, with the glute example, because in my early days of training, I didn't do much lower body stuff. I know, shame on me. I should be doing more of that. But the extent was like squats, but there wasn't much glute focused work. And I'd always do a lot of like static stretching, and it was perpetually tight. My glutes are tight. No matter what I do, I could stretch it for tons of minutes a day, every single day, and nothing would change. Then I started to do lunges, Romanian deadlifts, stuff that actually worked the glute. And lo and behold, over time, as I strengthened this muscle group, I accessed more range of motion and also reduced that perceived tightness. The exact same thing for the calves. Like, ankle mobility in the Western world is a struggle that nearly all of us face. And same thing. I'd never do calf work. I'd skip it a lot. And when I started introducing strength training for the calves with extended range of motion, pauses at the bottom, doing that multiple times per week, once again, lo and behold, ankle mobility improved without wasting time on just static passive stretching.
100%. Yeah, I always prefer the dynamic approach to the passive approach. Because you're strengthening through an entire range of motion rather than gaining passive flexibility, which often can result in lack of strength. in that range of motion, yes, you might be getting more flexible, which is great, and I think has a purpose. But if you want to get strong in that new range of motion, then that kind of dynamic range with load is going to be like, you're going to get the most bang for your buck pretty much out of that.
Can you quickly talk us through those different types of stretching and flexibility?
Yeah, so there's a few different types. My favorite is kind of like your weighted stretch or like long muscle length training. And I know that people like Mark Israetel and stuff harp on this all the time. And it's also great for hypertrophy. Like, it's probably the best thing for hypertrophy, and it's also creating a longer muscle as well. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds by training full range of motion at long muscle lengths. You're getting full range, deep weighted stretch on the muscle, which is great for hypertrophy and great for mobility as well. And just maintaining like, long, strong muscles, ligaments, and tendons. So that's one approach, which is my favorite approach, weighted stretching. Then you have obviously like static stretching, which I think has a place and can be quite nice. Sometimes I utilize it as like a wind down routine, even like a mindfulness practice to kind of, I don't know, because we do social media for a living. I'm sure you find the same. It can be hard to break away from technology, and something like a nice passive yin yoga style can be really beneficial for the mind, as well as maybe increasing some flexibility.
Parasympathetic, leaning into that.
Exactly. Yeah. And kind of getting into that relaxed state before bed is nice too. So sometimes I'll utilize that. And then you kind of have your PNF stretching, which is kind of like passive stretching and isometric contractions to enhance flexibility even further, which is a different approach. One that I don't use too much, but I do see the benefit in it. It is very intense and requires a bit of time and a lot of focus. And yeah, it is intense and it can cause a lot of cramps, that's for sure. But yeah, those are like the three main types that I like.
With the weighted stretching, I think we're all on board with that, knowing that it's an effective way to increase range of motion, plus you get the muscle mass alongside that if you're training pretty hard, intensity-wise. Do you have any particular rep ranges or holds that you like to do with weighted stretching, like a prescription?
I would say you probably don't want to go too low in reps. You probably want to keep them between 10 and 20, just because we want to protect our joints. Like if you're going sub maybe 5, you're probably going a bit too heavy in the weight, which could be, an injury risk, potential for injury risk. So keep the weight moderate to light. Aim for about 10 to 20 reps. I love doing like holds and pulses if you can manage it. Otherwise, I would say if you're a complete beginner, perform the reps and be done with it. Rest and then do another set. If you're getting more of a hang of it, like you're getting used to it, you're getting stronger, you're getting longer, you're feeling good, you can add that kind of extra stimulus, which is only going to boost that mobility by doing like little pulses in that end range. And then, like little isometric holds, feeling that deep weighted stretch. Those are all just going to compound and add to that mobility over time.
How much isometric duration would you be doing?
Personally, I wouldn't do more than probably like, if you're at the end of it, like you're doing a set of 10 and then you're doing like a little isometric hold or pulse, I would say I'd be impressed if you could do more than 20 seconds. So really just like aim to burn it out and like really feel that deep weighted stretch if you're pulsing or if you're holding isometrically. Yeah.
I have a similar approach to weighted stretching myself. The only thing I'd add would be it's muscle group dependent. So what you do for the lower body versus the upper body is a little bit different in terms of how you can structure it. So with, say, a horse stance, if you're doing that weighted through range and then a hold, you could probably do that heavier and for lower reps plus a longer hold, because we've got such big muscle groups there like your adductors and whatnot, versus say something for your shoulder flexion. Like it's the muscle size is so much different, and that should change the intensity and reps and duration somewhat.
Absolutely. I mean, that makes complete sense. Yeah. Those horse squats, man, they're tough.
If you had to outline your favorite weighted stretches, could you list those off in terms of like the most potent best bang for your buck type movements?
Yes, off the top of my head, I've got a few that I really love. One of them has been coined by my audience. It's called the exorcism curl. I don't know if you've seen me do that.
I can visualize it. It sounds nasty. Sounds like it's in the next banger of a horror movie.
Yeah, literally, like that's what the top comments are. It's just like, you look like you're from The Exorcist. Anyway, it's me on an incline bench or whoever, and you're kind of arching your back over the bench and doing a really deep bicep curl, coming all the way down and then squeezing up through the bicep. So you're getting like an insane stretch through the pecs, through the front delt, and on the bicep right at the bottom. And there's just like constant tension throughout the entire movement, which is why I love it so much. And it is scalable with all these movements. They're all scalable. So if you find that just like you feel like your pec's going to rip out of its socket, which a lot of people might feel, you can just reduce that by doing like a normal incline bicep curl, which is still getting a weighted stretch through the bicep, and the tension is, continuously on that bicep muscle through the entire range of motion. That's one of my favorites, the exorcism curl. And then ATG split squat for the lower body. Great for ankle mobility, hip flexor mobility, glute mobility. I think it's a phenomenal exercise all round for the lower body, and scalable as well. You can elevate the front foot to make it easier. And then as you get more flexible, you slowly reduce the height of that front foot, and then eventually you'll be on the ground. Let's see, another one, which I love.
What about for shoulders?
For shoulders? Are you talking more like shoulder flexion mobility or more of like a compound weighted stretch?
What comes to mind? What's your go-to bread and butter?
That's actually a tricky one. I mean, I love doing single arm weighted dumbbell overhead press and just coming like all the way down. That's more of like a compound exercise. For me, I love that unilateral work as well. But in terms of like, if I wanted to increase like shoulder flexion, I would say the cross bench dumbbell pullover is a phenomenal one for that. And that's going to open up shoulder flexion, which is basically your ability to reach up and overhead, which is very hard for a lot of people due to like tight lats and poor shoulder mobility. And that cross bench dumbbell pullover is basically when you're lying cross on a bench and you're reaching and you're arching your back at the same time, and then you're pulling it up all the way overhead. And you're going to get a beautiful thoracic stretch. You're going to get a nice deep stretch through the lats, which is just going to help your overhead shoulder mobility in the long term. Yeah. So that's one for the shoulders, which I really love. What else have we got?
I particularly like starting from the lower body, attacking it from the couch stretch, weighted. So you're against the wall. You've got arm overhead on the same side that you're stretching, the same hip. So it lengthens all through the hip flexor, up through the lat, and it just stretches you out like a rubber band. So you can push that into hip extension, lunging forward. It's really good for that rec fem, the quadricep muscle that crosses the knee and the hip. And just upper body, good bang for buck movement that I like is the butcher's block. So where you're either kneeling or in a push-up position, you're on your elbows with a weight behind you. So it's stretching the tricep, it's stretching the lat, it's forcing you into thoracic extension as well. Especially for the bigger boys that are listening to this, having a bit more weight to push you down tends to just coax more flexibility from what I've seen.
Yeah, no, those are phenomenal. I particularly love, and as a staple of my routine, the couch stretch. Like, just feels so good. Especially because I've been doing a little bit of running. So the couch stretch and tight hip flexors is just like a perfect combination to release those hip flexors.
For sure. And this is where we said before, doing your flexibility work in a routine where you've got structure, all good stuff, but there's certain exercises that are just good for daily mobility, flexibility. As you said, just a couch stretch, awesome. Sitting in a deep squat, hanging on a bar. What else do you like doing daily that's not overly intense but helps grease the groove of your body and your joints and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we've kind of established what to do in like a regimented routine, which is phenomenal and probably where you're going to see the most results. But in terms of microdosing mobility, which I've heard somebody, I didn't coin the term, but I've heard that term being said. But I think, doing little things like you're on a phone call, jumping into a deep squat, like you're even just going for a brisk walk, getting up for regular breaks when you're sitting at the office all day, going to get like water, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. And just kind of like moving around, greasing the groove, like you said, and all that kind of those micro movements that you do during the day, rather than just staying sedentary and sitting on your desk or the couch or wherever you may be. Just like moving around, greasing the groove, just feeling some motion in the body, twisting and turning, whatever it is, that's going to help compound over time, and your mobility is only going to get better and better, and it's going to help that end result, you know? And if you have a structured routine on top of doing that, then like you're really going to hit the nail on the head, like come the time of your goal.
For sure. And this microdosing of flexibility, especially for us fitness weirdos that love doing this all the time, listening to podcasts, it's such a good way to keep your body moving, especially say, for example, you're on a flight. This is a classic one. If you're like us, you're probably that weirdo that's getting up every 3 hours if you're on a long flight. And just knowing the different movements that your body can do helps you get less overwhelmed with picking stretches. So you know that you have to twist your spine laterally, rotate as well, extend it, flex it. If you just go through those movements from head to toe, it's incredible how good you feel after just 5 minutes of that versus the extreme example of just sitting on a 8-hour flight, getting up and feeling like you've got rigor mortis and you're 85 years old.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Just like breaking up those long bouts of being sedentary is going to have a huge effect on your mobility, but also like your mental state and your energy as well. Like I can't tell you how many times I've like woken up sluggish and I'm like, oh God, feel stiff, whatever. I'll do 5 minutes, little routine, and then just like an instant energy boost, and then I'm ready. You know what I'm saying?
What's funny about what you just said then is that even you get sensations of feeling tight and stiff, but people that have come across your Instagram, seeing you do these exercise curls and doing dips where your elbows are literally touching, they would probably think this guy never feels stiff or tight, but it's all relative, eh?
Exactly. Like it's all relative. Like I wake up feeling stiff all the time, but you know, after a little bit of movement, like I'm genuinely pretty good, you know, and I'm ready to attack the day. But yeah.
Changing flexibility exercise too often can cause slow progress and plateauing. How do you know when it's time to change when things start feeling stale?
Well, exactly that. Like if you've had all of a sudden, like you've made insane progress, you know, you've been doing this routine for a couple months now, and you're feeling great, and then all of a sudden, I've hit a kind of wall here, and I'm not feeling any more progress happening. Then you need to change something in your routine, whether it's, you can change multiple things at once, or you can pick a few. You can change your rep range. You can change the time of detention. You can change the exercises itself, which is probably what I would do, because your body's probably adapted to that new stimulus and you need something different to kind of, you know, re-jog and, you know, seeing some more results. So there's a few things you can do to kind of break that plateau. And it's not that hard. It's not like you've reached your maximum level and you're not going to get any more flexible. No, you just need to change a couple things to keep progressing. Like it's common with anything, even with weightlifting. Like you plateau, like I've plateaued, everyone plateaus all the time. And you just need to change the stimulus on the body to see those results keep flourishing.
That's fantastic guidance that you don't have to just change the exercise every single time to change the stimulus. That's something that could easily be forgotten with flexibility for whatever reason. We have to highlight that, just adding a slower tempo, pausing for longer at the end range, all these will make the same exercise feel different and cause your body to adapt in a different way. But also, what's really important is choosing a different flexibility exercise that ticks the same goal that you're striving for. I think that's the real downfall of just doing random flexibility exercises every single session, is you're not spending enough time in what you want to improve, whether it's your hip flexors or your shoulders or your thoracic spine, it's going to be a bit uncomfortable. You need to be doing things that address what you want to improve. I know it sounds very obvious, but sometimes we've got to suck it up and keep doing the stuff that's most challenging and will give us the best results.
Yeah, no, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, stick to the routine. If you feel a plateau coming, just change a couple things, like tweak a couple things, and you're probably going to notice, your results are going to keep flourishing after that.
This episode is sponsored by Fitness FAQs. Get stronger, build muscle, and increase flexibility with our calisthenics workouts. Use the coupon code podcast10 at checkout to save 10% off when shopping at fitnessfaqs.com. Take advantage of this discount and enjoy the progress. Most people find flexibility training boring. How can we make it more enjoyable?
That's an interesting one. I think keeping it short and sharp and sweet is obviously a lever that you can pull, because people don't want to spend hours in the gym stretching, obviously. And then finding subtle ways, like microdosing it into your day. You're on a phone call, jump into a deep squat, or like do a lunge or whatever it may be. And then integrating it into your current gym routine, which we also spoke on. So dropping the weight 30% and then really just focusing on that full range of motion, which is also a fun way to reintroduce like a new stimulus and also get the added benefit of increased flexibility and mobility because of that full range of motion. So there's a few things there that you can do to kind of keep it fun and interesting. And it's also going to help, change up your resistance routine without actually dramatically making like this huge lifestyle shift. Just a few things that you can tweak into your current routine that are going to have huge benefit down the track.
A common trap that I faced personally when I wanted to get more flexible is I looked at my body. I'm like, okay, ankles got to improve, hip flexors, spine, shoulders. And what I was doing, too many exercises, too many goals. And that in and of itself wasn't enjoyable because it took too long. I wasn't making progress. And then such a simple change, just choosing one area to improve at a time gives you the resources, the energy, and just like sustainability of continuing to do flexibility. So then I'm like, okay, for this season of 6 months, I'm just going to do side splits. I'll come back to upper body flexibility later and my other goals. And sure enough, doing that allowed me to see progress. I enjoyed it because it wasn't some big chore that I had to do this laundry list of stretches every single time. So that's what I'd say to someone that's on the fence about flexibility, finding it enjoyable or not.
100%. I couldn't agree more, especially for beginners. A great way to not see results and quit as quickly as you can is to have too many goals and then kind of see no progress. So if you're finding that you're just seeing no progress off the bat, you probably have too many things you're trying to work on too quickly, all at the same time. So just, if you can't touch your toes, maybe just focus on that. And then by the end of the program, however long it may be, you can touch your toes now. And you can maintain that you can reduce the load, have a new goal, and just maintain that toe touching flexibility that you've gained with a few touch points a week or however many, and then start working on a new goal. And that's a great way to kind of, hit that goal and then continue on with a new goal without getting overwhelmed and having to working on too many things at once and seeing absolutely no progress.
With that toe touching example that you just gave, what's your overall approach to flexibility? Are you the one exercise, one type of stretch to go for that goal? Or do you break down the toe touch into a calf, hamstring, a neural stretch? Where do you fit on that spectrum of chasing flexibility?
100%. I like to start from like a real baseline. So I would say, so I'll start with simple exercises. Say, for example, one will be focusing on like dorsiflexion, ankle mobility. The other will be focusing on like calf mobility and then hamstrings and then even like some lumbar flexion as well. So there's always components like different components that contribute to the goal, which you need to factor into those routines. And all the routines that I create, make sure to kind of hit every one of those nails so that you can get the best results and kind of optimize that routine.
I'm glad you said that, because the naive approach to flexibility is you can just do the position and get better. I'm going to touch my toes and I'm just going to improve if I'm diligent enough and just persist. Whereas the bottleneck is usually somewhere in there. It's like either the calf, the ankle, dorsiflexion, the hamstring, and then how all those parts fit into the whole as well.
Yeah, I mean, the body is so connected. It's not like it's one thing that's limiting you from your goal. It's like it's often a combination of things. So you have to take in those different factors when you're creating routines and when you're practicing flexibility and mobility.
I'm curious, you've been training for some time now. If you could go back to when you first started, what would you do differently in terms of flexibility gain?
Far out. I would definitely, to be fair, I think going through those formative years and doing the classic bro split and just broing out with your homies is something you have to do. And I cherish those moments with like my friends and like broing out in the gym and just lifting heavy and, just like figuring it out. I think it's awesome. But if I was to implement something, I would just say the simplest thing that I would have done was to be focused on that deep weighted stretch, controlling the motion, taking the ego out of the lift, whatever it may be. Controlling the motion, focusing on full range of motion. I would say that would be the main thing that would have the most positive impact down the track.
And further to that, what do you see other people doing in terms of holding them back from making flexibility progress? Like the most common things, without a doubt, you see in public all the time.
The most common thing I would say is just being sedentary for too long. Like people just get so damn tired because they're sitting at their desk all day, and they've got like their shoulders are rounding, they got terrible posture, their neck's stiff, like they don't have any activation in their glutes and their hamstrings and their hips. Like everything's turned off and inactive, and it becomes chronically short, like we spoke on earlier, and it can be a lot harder to release a chronically short muscle than you may think. So I just say, for all those people out there that are sitting at their desk, I would invest in something like a standing desk. For one, that's a really good start. And just take regular movement breaks. So you're working at your desk, you get a call, just get up, walk around the office, take the call, just stuff like that. It's the long bouts of being still and sedentary, which are causing most of the issues. So if you can just break it up, every hour, get up, have a glass of water. That's just a really, really simple, affordable, easy way to kind of reduce that stiffness long term, which is going to help, just help you live a better life, in the long run.
It's great that it's these accessible things that are easy to do and sustainable that make a huge change. And just integrating that into your life wherever possible is just the biggest takeaway people can apply to their lives. It's when you get off at the train station, don't just stand on the escalator, get onto the stairs, go up the stairs, like park your car 15 minutes away or take the train so you don't have to just sit the whole time. It's these microdose, as you said, including it into your life, and it just helps your flexibility practice go further. Because if you do this awesome flexibility routine 3 to 5 days a week, but then all the other time you're just sitting, it's just going to be hard to get the same benefit as the exact same person who's fidgeting around, standing up, taking phone calls, walking, changing postures. I think that's a huge, huge thing that you've highlighted there.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you compare two people, I don't know if the study's been done, maybe it has, but I'm sure the results will be very clear if you were to compare one person who sits down at their desk, works 9 to 5 and doesn't take regular breaks and is pretty much sedentary for 8+ hours of the day, 5+ hours of the day, and one person who's actively conscious, going to get up, getting some water, taking a lap when they need to, on the phone call, in a deep squat. Like if you compare them at the end of the 5 to 10 year mark, there's going to be a huge discrepancy in mobility there, and probably quality of life for that matter, I would say.
Putting this all together, what would a simple flexibility workout look like for the average person that's got average overall goals and can commit a reasonable amount of time? I know this is a very difficult question, but do your best to, if you had to give something to everyone and for them to see a benefit, what is a workout split that works quite well?
I would say keep it body weight, so it's extremely accessible to you. I would say for the average person out there, most of us work 9 to 5 sitting at a desktop, which usually means you have a stiff spine, your neck's probably stiff, your hips are probably tight, your glutes are probably tight as well, and you probably have poor ankle mobility. So I would take those, 4 to 5 areas, and I would just search up online, wherever it may be, 5 different exercises. I would do 3 rounds. That's 15 minutes. Just choose 5 exercises that target the hips, the neck, the spine, the glutes, the ankles. And I would just do 1 minute of each exercise, put a timer on, and do 3 rounds of that. And you can do that every day as soon as you wake up. And you're going to see some insane results if you really stay consistent and you're diligent with that practice. It can be that simple.
Yeah, it's just building it as a habit, something that you do consistently is better than the perfect plan on paper as a contrast that's done inconsistently or without just attention to detail. That's another thing I'd like you to outline further, is just how important is actual technique and I guess mindfulness when you're doing stretching?
I think it's important. I would say for beginners, not so important, just because for any beginner, I think getting in and just doing the work is the most important thing, getting used to it. And then as you do that and as you progress, you can start to become more mindful with it and in tune with your body. You can kind of, you might not be in so much pain down the track. So you can actually focus on the breath a little more, be a little bit more in tune with the sensation. And that helps, again, with just being mindful, breaking away from technology, kind of resetting, coming back down to baseline. And then it's kind of like meditation in a way. And then you can kind of have that kind of midday reset or morning reset or whatever it is, and then crack on for the rest of the day. You can start fresh, clear the mind.
For sure. And I notice a big difference in myself when I'm doing stretching and flexibility if I'm not present and I'm just going through the motions. I'm not going to do my reps with quality. I'm not going to use a full range of motion. I'll probably be holding my breath. I'll find ways to wiggle out of the stretch sensation versus being diligent. It's like anything in life. If you put in the effort, focused effort on what you're doing, especially with flexibility, you'll extend your range of motion and you'll actually change your body that way.
Yeah, it's consistency, it's discipline, it's sticking to the routine. You're going to yield the most benefit and long-term results.
For people who are motivated by us talking and want to improve their flexibility, what are some tangible things that we can work towards on our flexibility journey, be it positions and like outcomes of expressing our flexibility?
Yeah, there's a few, but I would say the most basic ones and the ones that you should be able to do, which are really good indicators of having, like a healthy level of mobility, and you're probably going to age quite well, is a deep squat, hamstrings covering your calves, heels completely flat with a nice upright posture and straight back. I would say forward fold, feet flat on the ground, legs locked, chin tucked under, nice and compressed, palms flat on the floor. So that's a great indicator of hamstring mobility, and the deep squat, a great indicator of like hip mobility, dorsiflexion, ankle mobility. And I would say if you can do, we're kind of leveling up a little bit here, but if you can do like a pancake with your legs kind of like you're sitting on the ground and your legs are wide, and you can at least, kind of walk forward a few inches, I would say that's a good level. Like if you can go completely flat, then boom, you're like, that's phenomenal. That's really good. And that's a really good indication of adductor mobility. And if you can do a couch stretch with your back flat and your knee touching the wall, and your back flat against the wall, that's a very good indicator that you have good quad and hip flexor mobility. Yeah, if you can do a back bridge, I was just going to say, really good indication of great spinal thoracic mobility and shoulder flexion. Really impressive move there. Scalable again. So there are ways to regress that to make it easier and slowly build up, because it is a difficult move for a lot. If you can do kind of like, I don't know can't remember what the name is, but like a frog spinal rotation.
Is that lateral flexion or rotation of the spine? Or is
Rotation.
that combining both? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but lateral flexion is also a great one as well. One of my
like a
favorite
side bend, yeah. How would you measure progress in that? Because with back bridge for spine extension, it's pretty stock standard. But for this side bending motion, it's a bit more like arbitrary. What's the standard? Like bending sideways, like horizontal relative to the ground, or what's the metric there?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. One way is I like to measure, there's a few ways actually. One of them, which I recently just implemented and I did this morning, was if you have a foam roller, you stick it up against a wall and you place your hip, like you step into it, so it's between your hip and the wall, and you grab, I was doing like 25 kilos. And what that does is keep your hips locked into place. And as you bend, you can't move your hips and you can only laterally move that spine. And you're going to feel like a really nice contraction through the obliques and a really nice side bend. So one of the ways you can measure that is obviously depth of bend and the weight that you're using. So that's a nice way. Also, pancake lateral bend. So you're in your pancake again, and you can put your arms overhead or wherever it may be.
Oh, bro, I hate that. My lateral flexion from the calisthenics is just not ideal. So that's my homework. Thanks for that.
Yeah, no worries. So obviously, hands straight up, doing that pancake side bend is going to be very tough. Hands on head's a little easier because your elbows a little bit of feedback from the ground. Otherwise, you can just kind of like graze your legs and then bend over to one side, and then graze and then bend over to the other side. So those are a few ways that you can get better at lateral flexion.
Are there any resources or communities that, I guess, showcase this stuff? Because it seems quite niche. It's not just your standard follow along stretches on YouTube. This is like some next level ROM stuff. Do you have any resources or people that you look up to with this stuff?
Oh yeah, lots of people I look up to. Ben Patrick, he's amazing. Roy Gold, he's a weapon. Like, wow, the stuff that he can do is pretty inspiring. Let's see who else. There's quite a lot of flexibility kind of like gurus out there now, which is great to see. Movement by David, he's very good. Yeah, range of strength, great. Like there's a few, Beard the Best You Can Be, he's great as well. Yeah, there's a few people out there that are just doing, like making phenomenal content, easily digestible and making mobility accessible for everyone, which is the goal and what we're all trying to do at the end of the day.
I ask you that just because with those resources, if people were to look up these people on social media, they could cobble together their own flexibility routine for free quite easily. You could just look up, okay, I want to improve my pancake. I'll gather some resources from a few of these, make my own routine. It's easier than you think. It's
definitely easier than you think. Absolutely. And it's completely possible for you to make your routine for free with all the content out there. Like, yeah, 100% you can do that.
Now, lower back pain has a prevalence of around 80%. So most people going through life will experience low back pain at some point in their life. Do you have any strategies or ways of approaching low back pain?
Yes. Stop sitting down for so damn long.
It's the not sitting, man. This should be the name of the podcast. Don't sit, stand.
Stop
move.
sitting, stand. Yeah, stand and just have regular breaks. That's the lowest level.
It couldn't be so easy though. I thought there was some type of special exercise or some type of
little magic sauce.
Morning routine. Yeah. Damn.
I know, but it's amazing, right? Like you think, I don't know, like you look at all these people like, oh, they must be doing something that I'm not doing. That's just like a complete secret and something I've never seen that is, making them have no back pain and be so mobile. But it's like, it just comes down to the fundamental principles. Like at the end of the day, yes, there are certain exercises that you can do that are going to yield some amazing long-term benefits. But for most people, what it comes down to is just like, stop sitting down for so long. have regular movement breaks, like move your body, resist against something, like go work out at least a few times a week. And that's just going to have the most, that's going to yield the most results for you. So it's just those small levers that you can pull during your day, which are going to yield the most benefit.
How about the fear from the public that the stuff that you do, bending forward like a Jefferson curl, is bad for your back, squatting knees over toes is bad for your knees? What do you say to people that are a bit scared of these type of movements, that they're going to hurt themselves, get pain, etc.?
It definitely can be bad. Like if you are not adapted and you're just someone off the street, normal guy, doesn't have much background in training, and you try and do something like that, you're probably going to hurt yourself. But if you establish the base and you work from the ground up and you do the correct processes and you work your way up slowly, it's all about slow progression to avoid injury and yield the most benefit long term, then it's completely accessible to you, and you one day will be able to do those intense sissy squats that Ben Patrick does, those ATG split squats with a barbell on your back. It just requires discipline and slow progression and scaling the movement right back to your level. Don't just go straight into it. Otherwise, you'll definitely hurt yourself.
Yeah, that's such a great message you just gave about it's all relative. It has to be scaled in terms of range of motion as well as intensity of contraction, load lifted. You can make any exercise safe if you scale it back enough. Further to this low back pain situation, it's not like when someone has pain in the lower back or anywhere else, we completely offload the movement entirely. Don't squat at all. Don't bend your spine. It's okay, let's find your tolerable range and work within that. That applies if you're in pain or discomfort. The same applies if you're trying to increase flexibility. You're not just going to go beyond your capacity, beyond your end range, because you're going to strain a muscle, get injured in that respect. Whereas if you just work within your means, and it's this snail progress over time where months build up and you're like, geez, my fingers are now touching the floor on a toe touch, whereas before I could barely get past my knees. It's all relative.
100%. Scale the movement back to your level and then slowly progress. Yeah.
With flexibility, how much of it actually lasts? So if you get good progress on, say, your back bend, your side splits, toe touch, do you have to do the same amount of volume, intensity to maintain these moves?
No. Like with anything, like you reach a certain point, you hit your goal, and then you can kind of scale it back and find that happy medium where you're kind of like, it's all individual, but you can find that happy medium where you can maintain that skill and kind of, just maintain it with a few touch points a week. Like it's not super tough. Like for me, I was trying to get the dragon squat, and I was practicing that like 5-6 days a week for like 4 or 5 months or whatever. And I finally got it. And now I practice it like once, maybe twice every week for just a few sets. And I'm able to actually maintain that skill. So once you hit that skill, you can scale it back and just kind of do the core work. And like within like a session or two a week to maintain that skill. So you don't have to necessarily like uphold the same level of volume that it took to require that skill in the first place. Once you hit that, you can kind of scale it back, maybe try for a new skill, and then just maintain that with a few touch points here and there.
That's the beauty of building strength at length, doing the weighted stretching, is that you're getting changes to your muscle at a local level through some nerdy stuff like adding more sarcomeres in series so the actual muscle gets longer. You're improving your stretch tolerance to like pain and discomfort, and that stuff sticks with you. If we compare that to just doing your standard static passive stretches, you're not getting that connection to your brain as much that this is safe and comfortable. So that's really uplifting that you don't have to do the same amount of work to celebrate and enjoy your range of motion for life.
Exactly. No, very well said. 100%.
How about having aesthetics and mobility? Is it possible to have both at the same time?
No, Impossible.
Oh,
You have to choose
damn
one.
it. I got to an hour in this conversation. I was hoping I could have my cake and eat it too. You've let me down, Jake.
Yeah, you can either just have like, you can be as stiff as a board and be like a big aesthetic bodybuilder, or you can be pear-shaped and have great mobility. You have to choose one. Like, there's no middle ground. No, you can definitely have both. And like, again, it comes down to those principles that were spoken about, like using full range of motion, getting that deep weighted stretch, really feeling that contraction, having a good mind muscle connection, and being disciplined and staying consistent with your routine, sticking to it, measuring your progress. And you are going to get both. Like, if you incorporate the weighted stretching philosophy, long muscle length training, you're going to get mobile and you're going to get aesthetic as a byproduct of that. Like, you're going to increase mobility and you're going to get stronger and you're going to, get hypertrophic adaptation. Like, it's possible for sure.
How much would you add flexibility wise to a bodybuilding workout? Say it's your standard push-pull legs routine. Do you add extra stretches after you've done your bodybuilding, or what approach?
I actually prefer to, if I was to pick one, I would choose to do like some sort of flexibility or mobility as an opener, so that I can kind of access that range right from the start. And then in my strength session, I can actually get more out of it because I've got more access to a wider range of motion or a longer range of motion, which is only going to boost my workout and potentially result in more hypertrophic adaptation and more mobility at the end of it.
Okay. With integrating flexibility into the gym as an example, is it more suited to free weights or machines for opening up into different ranges?
I think both. I've actually been... For a long time, I didn't use machines really at all, but recently I've actually been using some and I've found some really insane benefit, especially because it takes out the stability component, which will aid more in hypertrophy, but you also are getting that deep weighted stretch. Like, for example, the pec deck machine is great for like a really deep weighted stretch through the chest and front delts. And you're also getting that like hypertrophic benefit of, the pec deck, because you're getting such a deep weighted stretch, but you're also gaining that mobility and that extended range of motion as well. So little things like that.
Being able to overcome that stretch reflex as well, because if you're using free weights, there's probably more of a inherent risk that your body feels or apprehension to going further. Whereas if you do that on a pec deck, you could really focus on the breathing because there's no like stabilization or control of the free weights by comparison. I mean, as you said, both are great, but I guess if you really wanted to take it to the limit and beyond, certain machines, if they suit your body, could be good for bodybuilding plus flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, great for beginners too. Like, if you're worried about that like extra stabilization component and injuring yourself, you can scale it back by using a machine which takes that kind of stability risk out of the equation, and you can kind of just focus on the stretch.
Awesome. Jake, that was an absolute pleasure speaking to you, mate. Where can people find out more about what you do?
Thanks so much for having me, man. It's great to meet you face to face. And yeah, you can look me up pretty much on any platform. Elastaboy, Elastaboy. Yeah, that's me. Lots of mobility content out there for you, and just trying to provide value for the people who seek and need that mobility content.
If you're looking for someone well-rounded who will motivate, inspire you to what is possible with flexibility, definitely check out Jake's stuff.